Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Select Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 12th, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was just checking. We have a guest. Our state rep is coming. I don't see her quite yet, but she'll be coming along, Lindsay Sabadosa. So as usual, we start with gems of wisdom, words of gratitude, and thankfully tonight we have a lot of things to be thankful for. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all our veterans in the community. Yesterday was Veterans Day, and I just want to say thank you for your service and for your sacrifice. Is there anyone in here that is a veteran? Thank you very much for your service. I appreciate all you do. Next, I'd like to mention that this meeting is being videotaped and also it's going out live. And we're going to start with an acknowledgement to one of our citizens, volunteers. Many of you are aware that the annual report this year has been dedicated to Arthur Lawrence. Before I read, would anybody like to say a couple of words? I know some folks here nominated him for the annual report, so I would, before I officially read this, I'd like to see if anybody would like to say anything unofficially.
I mean, I was very pleased to nominate Art because for all of the years that I've been on committees and I've come in and out of this building, he's always been a constant. He was a person that, as a new person in town that I went to, who oriented me, who gave me direction, who helped me figure out the communications on the town website and scheduling the meetings and everything. Art was, an invaluable resource. And I kept looking for ways in which I thought we could thank him publicly. And so when this opportunity came up, I nominated him, and I think he definitely deserves it. And I'm very glad that it worked out this way. Congratulations.
Thank you. Anybody else? And if you've had a chance, I hope you have, to get a chance to see the I hope you like the picture of him out there in the Conservation Commission and everywhere else. He's been in the building inspector's office full-time. It's our great pleasure to dedicate this year's annual report to Arthur Lawrence in appreciation of his dedicated service to the town of Southampton. Art has volunteered with the town since 2009. He has served in many capacities as the resident IT expert, as a member of the Conservation Commission, and as an administrator with the building department. He also holds elected office as chairman of the Personnel Policies and Procedure Board, and he does a tremendous amount of volunteer work. He studied chemistry in college and worked as a chemist at various hospitals, including Western Memorial in Springfield and Holyoke Hospital, where he was head of the chemistry department. He always wanted to be an engineer, so at the age of 38, married to his wife, Louise, hello, and with 3 teenagers at home, he went back to school and earned a degree in electrical engineering from UMass for almost 3 years. Art worked full-time at night while going to school. So anyway, eventually the day came when he faced retirement, a word that he doesn't really know what it means. Not one to sit around, he finds that volunteering in his community helps keep him busy and fulfilled. In his spare time, Art is an avid reader and gardener, and he still loves watching baseball. So I just want to read this to him. In appreciation, the town of Southampton proudly dedicates the 2018 annual town report to Arthur C. Lawrence in grateful appreciation for and in recognition of his exceptional and long-standing commitment, volunteering his time to the town and the services it provides to our residents. So thank you very much, Art.
Let's get a picture.
Yeah. We can have a picture with you. Art, that was great.
Good.
Well, we just like to get the seal too of. Actually, welcome, Representative Sabadosa. If you'd like to join us for the picture, that'd be wonderful.
That's right. Photo all the time.
We'll get behind you.
This is Lauren, this year, receiving this for all of us incredible volunteers. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Can you see everybody?
One of those famous smiles, Art.
Yeah,
All right,
the
big
one when someone
smiles.
comes in without their permit.
Francine, just move over a little
Over
bit.
here?
There you go. There
Okay.
we go. We'll try this again. Big smile. Great, thank you.
Can we just can we include you in one of the pictures also?
Yes.
We do wish.
I'll share the pictures.
Thanks for everything.
Oh, that's for sure.
Good job. Oh, if you want to. Oh, thank you, Cindy.
I think sometimes Art's here more hours in a day
You
than
know, I'll say to him,
and he doesn't get paid.
I have a job to do, but you're so busy elsewhere.
Okay, large smiles.
Come on, dear.
And one more. Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. That was very nice of you. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Congratulations.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt.
Congratulations and thanks for everything.
Next, I'd like to invite Fire Chief John Workman up to the podium.
Tonight, I have the honor to introduce you to a gentleman that's been on the fire department for just about 40 years. I think when I got into the fire service, what I really appreciated about it was that firefighters mostly come to the job not just for a paycheck, but to really help community. I think that volunteerism with Art is a great thing. I think that here in Southampton, I started as a volunteer call firefighter. When I came to Southampton, it wasn't just a full-time department with guys that were on job, and it just wasn't the case. Here, we fill all of our shifts with firefighters. They may be professional firefighters in their regular job, but they come here and they put in the hours, the extra hours, to cover our town with a professional level of service that really goes way far beyond what is called for. And it's in that spirit that Jim Gartzka came into the fire service, like I say, 40 years ago. He has been an officer for 20 years, really an outstanding individual. When I came into the service, I know that Jim was, he'd been on for 30 plus years. And he came to me one day and said, Chief, I think I've served my time. I know you got a lot of new things that you're doing here. You're bringing, a lot of training, this and that, that's coming into the department. And I looked at him and said, Jim, you don't understand. You signed on for life. And if I could have held him to that, I would have. Insurance, unfortunately, won't cover him after 65. And that's too bad, because Jim is still an asset to our department. Through his knowledge, through his teamwork, through his camaraderie. He really is a wonderful person to have worked with. I really would not have chose to let him go at all. But I certainly thank him absolutely for our service. Jim, I'd like to bring you up just to have him say a few words and have you get the go-ahead.
Okay.
From the department. Jim,
All
thank
right.
you very much. Jim Gartzka, Captain Jim Gartzka.
Thank you, Chief Workman.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to serve on the fire department, and I'd like to thank the Select Board for all their support of the fire department, and also all the firefighters and officers and everything I've worked with over the years. It's been quite an experience. I've learned a lot about firefighting, EMS, myself, the town, people in the town. It's been good.
Great. Well, thank
you.
you very much. I'd like to... I just want to read this on behalf of the town. In appreciation, the town of Southampton, Mass. proudly recognizes Captain James Gartzka in grateful appreciation for his dedication and long-standing service to the Southampton Fire Department and the services it provides to residents. So thank you very much.
It's a bunch of years.
Gotta get some pictures here, too.
Misunderstood. Thank you for taking this, man. I appreciate
Thank you.
The record volunteerism has no end.
No, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So if you can stay up for a photo, that's great.
Okay.
Oh, you just,
Yeah.
you want him to be in a picture?
Well, no, yeah. Well, I was thinking, you guys want to file it back here? Let's.
Well, if you want, we can do it select, then we can have all the fire.
Okay, that sounds good. Do it select board and then fire department.
First is
1979 you started?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. How old were you?
Right now?
Yeah, I know then.
Oh, then I was like 24.
Oh, thank you.
You're good.
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Where's she hiding?
there you go.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You're not going to be seen, right?
You're in Francine. There you go, Francine. There you go.
Okay, here we go.
You're behind.
All right, am I blocking anybody back there? Okay.
Everyone smile. One more. Awesome.
Thank you. All right, now you need congratulations, and now you get it with the other.
Thanks for your service, appreciate it.
Hey, brother.
Hey.
You got the group here. You got, aren't you? Yeah. Got to get our good side. Oh, here we got to get Bill in here. Come on,
Come on, Charlie.
Charlie, what, you were on with him.
You're on with me.
I was there before you. Come
You
up
got me
here.
on the department.
This is the fire department shut. Come on up.
That's days of war, Charlie.
You do realize I went to grammar school with him.
Probably in this room.
Yeah.
Can't get them all in, can you?
There we go. That works. One more big smiles. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I think in part. In part, that's true.
I'd like to invite up our police chief, Ian Hollingsworth.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Mark Grover. He's our newly appointed lieutenant with the police department. Just a little background on Mark. He got appointed in October of this year, and some background on him. He's been an employee with the Southampton Police Department for about 27 years. He started out as a dispatcher in 1992. Within about 6 months, they recognized his talents, Chief Skorowski did, and promoted him to a police officer. And then shortly thereafter, he became a full-time officer and served as a sergeant for about 7.5 years. And he is, just like I said, just recently promoted as a lieutenant. He couldn't ask for a better person in this position. It just demonstrates exactly what you want in a police officer. Community commitment to his staff, and just honesty and integrity. So I'm proud to acknowledge Lieutenant Mark Grover as our newly promoted lieutenant.
Great, thank you.
All right. Good evening. Thank you. I'd just like to say that I'm honored to have been appointed this position. I know that it's extremely important. I am looking forward to serving the town of Southampton for the remainder of my career as best I can, and I appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
picture?
Hey, Janet, I just got a picture of this money.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Rena. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So we'll get, all right.
Might be, I don't want to like, keep running, guys.
We'll all get in here.
Yes. There we go.
We're done yet? Photo night here.
Yeah.
I'm always in the back.
There we go, perfect.
Everybody safe?
We're good.
I think
Yeah, wait,
needs to be
come on
out
up here.
front.
There we go. How's that? There we go.
I used to be taller. I used to be able to stay in the back.
Got to keep her under control.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks again, John.
I do think you may be slightly taller than I am. So there's
Do you have a copy of it? I'm going to go ahead and, if it's okay with everybody, I'm just going to go ahead and keep with the very happy news and move up one of the items on the agenda. So I would like to recognize Paula and Theodore Hendrick, who are in the audience here. I'd like to read a letter from Paula to the Select Board. This is dated October 31st, and it says, "My father, Theodore Hendrick, and I wish to donate approximately 9 acres of undeveloped land to the town for conservation. The land is in my name. The parcel at 57 Cold Spring Road at the intersection with Rattle Hill consists of 3 fields, several acres of wood with large specimen tulip poplars, white oaks, red oaks, and white pines, and a wetland. A perennial stream feeds the Manhan River. A cellar hole dating from 1737 is from the homestead of one of Southampton's first 30 settlers. The land is an area classified by the Mass Biomap Project as critical natural landscape and is adjacent to other parcels, prime for conservation with the town's 84-acre Clearwater Woods conservation area nearby. In 1970, my father and my mother, who was Maxine Hendrick, donated 15 acres on College Highway for the Lyman Conservation Area, and we hope to continue the family tradition of land conservation with this donation. The Kestrel Land Trust has been advising us on this process. The Conservation Commission has recommended that the donation be accepted. Thank you for consideration." So I just want to extend our heartfelt thanks for this offer, and we will continue to work together, and this, of course, has to go to town meeting and such, but I just want to say thank you very much for this donation.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Would you or your father be interested in speaking at all or saying anything? I mean,
I'm really.
They have to actually come to the podium, okay? 'Cause that's where the speaker is.
Thank you. I didn't realize that this also needed to go to town meeting, and I'm very pleased that you have read the letter, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
That's it. Out here.
You can stay for the rest if you like.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'll take the letter together and it's just. Thank you very much. All right. I'll be in touch, Paul.
Now, I believe that Easthampton Media, maybe Robert, you could, wasn't Mr. Henrik interviewed, or was he interviewed for the Easthampton Media when we were having the, sort of the new Old Home Days? Celebrate Southampton.
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. Yes, he was. He was also filmed privately under the umbrella of the Historical Society for a long interview.
Yeah.
And so that's available.
Is that uploaded on our website? I know I have the link.
The family decided not to share the first one.
Okay.
And that's kind of where it stands now. That may change.
Okay, but I think in your newsletter, didn't you have a link to some of the interviews that happened?
There were 3, Easthampton Media created 3 videos to celebrate Southampton.
Okay, are they accessible anywhere?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're online, Easthampton Media, Southampton, drop it down, government, and then it's broken down.
Great,
They
okay.
were also shared on the Facebook page.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Southampton News.
Wonderful.
Yep. Cheers.
Thanks. We're going to go ahead then and jump to welcome Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, who is going to speak to us about updates from the state and any questions the Select Board might have. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here this evening. I have extended the offer to all of my Select Boards that I'm always happy to come and provide an update, so I'm glad that Southampton took me up on that. I'll just go over a little bit of what we've been working on at the State House and then give you a preview of what's to come in the new year. Then I'm happy to answer any and all questions, and I promise I won't take up too much of your time this evening. So far in this session, we have done the 2 major items that we need to do, which would be the budget and then the education funding bill, which I'm very proud to say passed the House. It is a very good piece of legislation. It's a very good first step. It does not do everything that it needs to do for the town of Southampton. I will be very honest. It will provide extra funding. So we were just going through the numbers and we've sent those to the superintendent, but I'm happy to provide them for the Select Board as well. But Southampton will see about an extra $100,000 coming in, which is something. It's certainly not as much as we need. There will be extra money for charter school reimbursements. And that bill right now is in conference committee, but I expect that we will vote on the engrossment and enactment by the end of the session, and that is November 20th. So we're expecting it really any day now. As we are going to then work on the supplemental budget, and we are in the next week expected to take up a bill on vaping and banning flavored vaping. So that's really been our focus. We will expect a major healthcare bill to be coming down the pike as well, and then the big news is the transportation revenue bill. So figuring out ways that we can actually fund transportation. I was assured that that bill will not focus solely on Eastern Massachusetts. I had that conversation with House leadership today. So I think for me, it would be helpful if I can hear ways in which you feel that Southampton could benefit, whether it's bus service, or I know that there is the rail trail that a lot of people are interested in connecting, and we've certainly been working on legislation to help with that and to get more money. We will also have a transportation bond bill. I've heard from the town about some ideas of things that we could put in that. I'm happy to put in more. I want to caution that it's a bond bill. So bond bills, we then have to fight to get the money released from them. But it is very good if we can get things in for the town as well, because we can then fight for those as we go through the budget process. We are at the point where almost all of the legislation, or a large chunk of it, has been heard by committee. So we're going to be more focused on how we get our bills out of committee. So if there's something in particular you want me to focus on, I think that this is the time for us to start having more serious conversations, because the committee, we end November 20th, we go back in session in January, and we're really going to have to make sure that if there's something that needs to come out in this session, that's when we start really ramping up the advocacy for it, because we'll slide right back into the budget again in April. And it starts to feel like time is a little bit short, even though I realize it may not feel that way to people outside of the State House. So that's a little bit of what we're working on. I'll just remind you that I'm on the Transportation Committee, the Election Laws Committee, the Cannabis Committee, and Steering Policy and Oversight. Steering Policy and Oversight is really the committee where all bills go through. So it's a stop on the train before they go to third reading and then a vote. So getting bills released from that committee into third reading is very important. And so it's good to be on that committee. It gives me insight with the chair about what's moving and when. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them and to touch upon issues that you may be concerned about.
Yeah, just a quick one on the
Please.
vaping. Is it going to be that you're going to try to ban it for below 21 or ban it entirely?
They're not going to ban it entirely, but they are looking at banning flavored vaping and as well as menthol cigarettes.
For any age group?
Yes.
Okay. Are you thinking of banning it for anybody below 21?
I mean, in theory, it should already be banned for people under 21.
That's true, it is, yeah.
Yes.
You're right. So just the flavors?
But I think the argument around banning the flavors is that they really are targeted at young people, and there is a racial component to this too. You find that flavors and menthol cigarettes in particular cost less in communities of color. There are ways to kind of get people hooked to these products and then to bring them into other types of tobacco-based
Now
products.
that they found the health link, it's even more important.
Yeah. So it is controversial, though. There are area businesses, I've heard from several in Southampton, who really don't like this idea. They claim that it's going to hurt their bottom line. I've asked for figures from all of those businesses, and I haven't seen numbers about what sales look like, but it's a good public health bill, and I think that's the focus.
And if I understood the thoughts today, and the news I heard, that Governor Baker had lifted the ban on medical vaping for medical purposes.
Yes, although there's some dispute exactly what that's going to look like. So the Cannabis Control Commission was in the building today having some conversations about what that process looks like. It was particularly difficult for medical marijuana patients with this vaping ban because there was no way for them to then get the products that they needed and had been prescribed. So it'll probably take a few days to clarify exactly when and how these things are returning, but yes.
Yeah, just what's happening with the, I think it was the community preservation funds and the rail banking issue?
Right, so that is a good example of one of the bills that we need to advocate for in the new year. So it's already had its hearing. I've submitted testimony. I've already a co-sponsor. I know that it's important to Southampton. It's funny, it's 2 communities in the state where it really makes an impact, and Southampton is one of them. We're going to have to advocate because, again, it's just 2 of us in the whole state that are really, really going to benefit from that bill. So, if there were ways that the city could be supportive, if there are letters, any sort of thing that I can continue to bring to leadership, that would be very helpful. It's part of my advocacy when I sit down with the speaker and the majority leader to say this is something that my district needs.
And that won't come up until sometime in the spring or something?
It has not been released from committee yet, so really the first goal is to get it released from committee and then to see if it needs to go to another committee, but the sooner we can do that, the better. But I do understand its significance for the town.
What does it take to get released from committee? Is it just a vote of the committee?
No, it really is a lot of hard work. It's convincing the chairs that it's something that generally doesn't cost the state a lot of money if we want it to move quickly, that it's particularly pertinent to maybe 1 or 2 communities in the state, and then just a lot of letters and a lot of meetings. I can tell you I just moved a bill through for the town of Westhampton, which involved meeting with the chairs of the committee that it was sent to, which was municipalities, then sitting down with the chair of steering policy and oversight, then sitting down with the chair of third reading, and then in the meantime going to the speaker's office and to the majority leader's office and making sure they knew that this was a priority. The town of Westhampton was also great. They sent letters saying this is really urgent, we really need you to do this, and that helped to move things along. And of course, if the senator and the rep can work really well together, I mean, in that case it was Senator Hines, and he was great in pushing things forward, that helps. I mean, it's certainly never a guarantee, right? There are definitely bills that are more complicated, but for bills like the CPA funding, that feels like if we worked really hard together. I know that Senator Humison is now leaving, but in any case, he's still there for the next few months, or at least I think he is. I don't know when his date for being sworn in is. I didn't hear that this morning. But in any case, I will say I know that Rep. Velas is running for the seat, and he's also been really trying to step up and be useful.
Okay, good.
With regard to the education funding bill, I know that you've said that it doesn't go far enough,
No, it
and a lot
doesn't.
of people say that it doesn't as well. Do you have a general consensus of what the rest of the state rep feels, like how they generally feel about that? And that's
So-
kind of question number one. And then if they feel like it doesn't go far enough, I guess, why hasn't it gone far enough?
Because so I don't know if I can say there's a general consensus among all of the state reps. What the, now, it was the Promise Act, now it's called the Student Opportunity Act. It's essentially the same basic components. The reason that everybody was able to get behind that legislation was really that it was a social justice bill. So it was pouring money into communities, almost all communities, but low-income communities more than anything. So low-income learners, English language learners, and we know that if we don't do that, right, as a state, we're failing. And so we were all able to get behind that. We started to see fractures when we talked about charter school reimbursements in particular. There are, charter schools in other parts of the states that reps feel are very, very important, and we don't want to change that funding formula. Of course, that is not my perspective from the way charter schools look in my district. So it didn't go far enough in that sense. It also didn't go far enough because of the transportation funding. That argument is much harder. I know how much it impacts Southampton, Westhampton, Montgomery, but there are so few of us out here really, really pushing for that, that it became particularly challenging. And I fought for that amendment, and it still just, it fell on deaf ears. So we're going to keep trying, and we're going to, I think the charter school funding formula is the next thing that we go after. I know Senator Hines is again on a transportation committee. I just spoke to him this afternoon. He's trying to look at ways where we can make that argument that fully funding regional transportation is actually a good thing for the whole Commonwealth. But it's been really hard. It's been really hard to explain to the folks in Eastern Massachusetts what our school districts look like, because they do not get this idea of regional schools where things are very, very far apart. And when I talked about how far the buses travel for Hampshire Regional, it was almost like they didn't believe me, that there could be that many buses traveling that many miles.
So they have fully funded transportation in the eastern part of the state?
Well, they don't have regional schools, so it's very different, right? If you're traveling like across, even like for Northampton, for example, when you're just traveling across the city, those costs are very different than what you're incurring in Southampton.
You should invite them out in January.
Yes, well, those are things that we will do, yes.
Well, thank you for your support of regional transportation. I know you're very outspoken and trying, it was the state that encouraged us to regionalize in the first place and promised 100% reimbursement for regional transportation, and has never done much more than 70%. I think it's right now at 60-something%, right?
Yes, although it is supposed to go up with this piece of legislation, so I think
that's a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money that the local taxes have to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know you've been very supportive of it.
And I think that as we talk about the transportation revenue bill, maybe there's something that we can talk about within that, because they are talking about gas taxes. If that happens, then that's going to increase regional transportation costs without, adding more money to it. So maybe there's some sort of way we could brainstorm to get something in the bill that talks about that too. It's a good idea to bring up. There is a rural caucus within the State House that talks about these ideas a lot, so we'll kick things around.
Any other questions? Next week, our Master Plan Implementation Committee has been working very hard to relook at the master plan, and they've gone sort of chapter by chapter. And next Select Board meeting, they're coming to actually present sort of where they're at and priorities. And at the same time, over the course of the last couple of months, the Select Board has also come up with a list of things that we've had guest speakers and learn about that we have an interest in, and we're going to try to match up some of the interests that they present with some of the things. And so I just wanted to tell you some of the things. I'm going to get a copy of this for all the Select Board members for next time so that we can sort of compare. But right now we have funding for the East Street Bridge. Yes. And so step 2 would be from the bridge to Route 10, and step 3 would be from the bridge to County Road or Line Street. Public Safety Complex, community solar, sewer limited to Route 10 initially, if at all, and then fiber optic or being a municipal light district. These are things that we're interested in from the standpoint of infrastructure and economic development. From the standpoint of community and employee benefit, it's disability insurance, something that internally we need to look at as a town. Senior and affordable housing, preserving strategic open space, the Greenway, complete and up-to-date IT capabilities, safety and maintenance, and then the Hampshire Regional Agreement review. That's a old document that has been around for a long time, and there's been interest in kind of relooking at that. So that's our sort of list that we're going to match up against MPI, and we'll see where we decide to all put our energies.
And if I could get a copy of that, that would be really great.
Great.
Yeah.
Happy to.
It's useful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for coming, and you're going to
course.
stay for our discussion about the...
I will indeed.
Yes.
And I just want to reiterate for everyone, I know sometimes questions come up after I am no longer standing up here, so please continue to reach out to me privately, call, whatever. We do have office hours in Southampton, but we are trying to find ways to connect more with the community. So if you have any ideas of locations, times, we're very open to that. We want to make sure that we're meeting people where they are, as opposed to maybe setting up office hours that are not the most convenient. So please continue to reach out.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For coming.
And so you're going to be part of the discussion for, I'm moving the agenda all over the place to be able to catch some of the things for Representative Sabadosa, and we're going to go ahead and talk about a follow-up to a meeting that was held in town, and I'm just looking for it on the agenda here. Is it under new business?
And old business.
It's under old business.
Old business. Okay, yes. Town-owned parcel, College Highway, MDAR, meeting update. We have some folks from the Board of Health also here to be part of this discussion. So I'll just give a little context. Basically, this is 8.44 acres of land that the town currently owns. It was previously owned, the farm was owned by the Fowles family, and then it was bought by the Fletcher family, and there's been a persistent problem with erosion. And so that was dealt with in a couple different ways. It basically hasn't been entirely successful. Now the Fletchers find themselves in a situation where the erosion is causing continued problems to their farm. At the time, the town bought the land because there was funding available for the town and municipality to get funding to try to fix the problem. There was an attempt to fix the problem. It didn't exactly work. So now we're sort of at a different crossroads. So a meeting was held with representatives from MDAR and Representative Sabadosa, myself, and Board of Health folks, and we had a discussion around the possibility or interest in the town of transferring this 8.44 acres or selling the land for the purpose of having individual private citizens be able to get funding to be able to hopefully once and for all take care of the erosion on this property, which is causing continued problems to the farm. Did I capture basically it?
Yeah, and Rini, if you don't mind,
Yes.
as an abutter to an abutter, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion, and
Okay.
I'll rejoin you when you're done with this part of it.
Yep, we'll come and get you then. Thank you, Chris. So who would like to discuss any aspect of this? Would anybody from either the Board of Health or Bob or Cheryl, would you like to say a few words? Why don't you start then about basically what you've been dealing with? I know you came a couple months ago, and I just want to I want you to know that the state had come over around the time, I think I don't know, let me know if this is true, but I was told that it was when the road was done over Route 10, and there are culverts that were put in, and it's causing, that kind of was the start of some of the problems, that the Fowles family had tried to address these problems, and the state basically said, we're not responsible for the problem, the culverts are working fine, we have no liability for this. And then recently, the state also basically said the exact same thing. They came out, they evaluated, said everything is fine, we're not sort of responsible for the problem, and so now it's sort of for us to deal with.
But intervening, my understanding was that the town, when it was town property, received a grant to remediate it, and whatever was done doesn't work.
Correct.
So going forward, we can't repeat that.
It was about $600,000 if I'm not mistaken, and that the efforts that were done to remediate the problem weren't successful. So do you want to say a few words, Bob? Just introduce yourself.
Bob Fletcher, 22 Gun Road. We have had a number of meetings, had a lot of discussion about what's going on. What we're finding out is when the project was done, there was supposed to be a yearly monitoring of this entire parcel. the yearly monitoring went up until about 2008 and then stopped. And we have been asking questions over the years of what the town intends to do, and the response we got was, it's a bottom priority, there is no money, whatever happens, happens. And unfortunately for us, the erosion is on either side of the gully, and it is encroaching onto our land on both sides. So I had approached the town to ask them if there was a way that we could do something different with the land, to release the land. We are able to access grant money through Mass Department of Ag Resources. The only way to access the money is to own the property. So unfortunately, there's channels that we have to go through. As I was told, it's easier to take the land than it is to give it back. There were supposed to be stipulations originally in the meetings that I attended that when the original project was done, there was supposed to be a period of time, and then the land was supposed to be put back with the farm, but nobody can find any legal documentation referring to that. But I do recall the meetings, but it's neither here nor there. So I guess this is where we're at now. We have been proceeding, asking some questions of some different ideas we can come up with. We have spoken with Mass Highway. We get very little input from Mass Highway. Basically, the road is there, their infrastructure is in place, and yes, whatever happens, happens. And I guess that's about where we're at right now.
So we very much appreciate all of the collaborative efforts.
Would you like to say anything? After this? Okay. And so can I just ask a question that you had said that as up until 2008, there was supposed to be annual review of what was happening. Was that from the...
It was originally through Environmental Compliance Service, and Environmental Compliance Service was sold. I don't recall the company they were sold to, but basically any and all records they had of the entire project were destroyed at that time. And basically what they told me is this is out of their hands, and it's what they did is done.
Yeah.
So I always thought that, you know, I really thought that to be a time frame where the town would do what was discussed in the early meetings, where they'd say, you know, we will turn it back over. We will turn it back over to the farm, and then it will be yours to monitor and yours to take care of. And every time that we went down that avenue, we was told no. And I approached APR because if you read the APR guidelines, APR had the right to walk in when the land wasn't being monitored anymore. They did have the right to come in and remove the land from the town, and they also chose not to do it. So this is kind of where we find ourselves right now.
So the state has pretty much said that they're not responsible and everything's working on the road and the culverts. And so and then the town received $600,000 to actually provide some repair. And I know the Fowles family had also initiated trying to repair the problem. And can you explain to me what was done with the $600,000 which didn't work?
The $600,000 was primarily remove the tires.
Okay.
And I would say probably 99%, 99 and some change percent of the tires are gone. There are some residual tires, and it was explained that these tires would come to the surface, and they have over the years. If there were more than 100 tires that have come to the surface down there, I'd be shocked if there was more than that. I do make pretty regular visits. We're working on the, around the area all the time, so we do keep an eye on it. Let's see, we have thrown some ideas at some people. Spoke to Mr. Trueheart today about the possibility of some drainage to pick up the water from the pipes so we can centralize the water. We were just looking for some prices on some piping as opposed to having a an asphalt swale constructed along the base of Route 10 to pick up the water coming out of these pipes. Pipe is just the pipe without installation. We were just shy of $15,000 for pipe. And there's more that needs to be added to it. So our intention was to start to dabble in this thing to see where the land would end up. But it is my feeling that if the land does not end up with us, there needs to be some kind of policing, that if another party does get it, they have to fix it. I don't think I should be left with this. I'm more than willing to do the work, and I'm more than willing to do what it takes to get the grants. It is my feeling that the land was part of the farm. It should be put back to the farm, and it should not have a third party that is going to be in the middle of what we're trying to do. But that's just my opinion. So,
well, back then, it was sort of the opposite situation where the town was able to get funding to be able to fix it, and that's why it was sold to the town for $1.
correct. And it was one of those grants that they said you have to own it to get the money.
Right. And has the land been cleared or signed off on in terms of any sort of environmental hazard? It is. Right.
Signed off,
Right.
it's in the registry of deeds.
Come on. Want to come to the podium, Jerry?
Jerry Swanson, Public Health Director. Conservation Commission signed off on it. It's in the Registry of Deeds. DEP was very pleased with the project. It did what it was supposed to do. It removed the tires. But I think at this point, there's erosion that's going on to private property. And I think that, you know, the Select Board a year or two ago asked the Water Department, were they interested? No one is interested in the property. It really belongs with the farm. So I think that, and it's up to you to make that decision.
Yep. It's up to the town to make the decision.
Right.
The voters.
But you have to get it on the warrant. And I think that the Department of Agriculture also had an issue about the assessment of the 8 acres.
Right, 24
It's really,
something,
it's
right.
way too high. It
Right.
has to be assessed as agricultural property.
Right.
So.
And I think everyone is in general awareness of that. And there were more people from MDAR at the meeting and on the phone basically saying that with a lot of confidence about being able to have funding available for a private owner as opposed to a municipality.
Well, they were pretty much assuring us that, you know, it would not be an issue for, you know, the owners of the farm to get that funding and take care of the erosion problem. So I don't think it's too complicated if we all work together.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
What kind of questions did anybody have?
The land itself is farmable, hay, crops, and all that stuff?
No, it's basically, it's a...
Sorry.
Basically, what the frontage on it is a small piece of hayland.
Yeah.
It is a gully with what conservation terms an intermittent stream.
Okay.
It's the majority of the water that's in the gully is runoff from property across the highway.
Yeah.
There's 3 pipes that the water, there's the primary runoff is from Route 10, secondary roads, you know, around it.
Yeah.
Everything is coming that way. As I've said, it's the lowest point on Route 10 in that area, and all the water goes there. My concern as we go forward is the parcel of land that has been sold above us. It's commercial property. I'm pretty certain that most of the water that's generated on that property when it's constructed, I'm going to get it. And if I'm already having problems and the problems are getting worse and worse with just housing around me, parking lots are going to generate a lot of water, and it's got to go somewhere. And it will probably take that gully and just open it up, even worse than what it already is.
So the issue,
It's my feeling that we have to stop kicking the can down the road. And as I told this is how far back it goes. Representative Peter Kokot, I said, I really don't want kids to inherit this problem. I'd like to deal with it in my time, and so that they don't have to worry about it going forward.
So the issue is this property is not usable, but the complications from that property is ruining your farmland.
Right, like I can give you, just with the heavy rain that we got last year, there's a parcel of land out behind the Hackworth Securities Building. And I came across this purely by accident this past spring. A brand new washout, and it's probably within 2-3 years, it will be underneath my field.
It'll be there.
And what it's going to do is take everything, and it's just going to widen. And it's just one of those things, you have to address it at some point.
You want to say something, Charlie?
Switch hats. Charlie Konecki, I'm the emergency manager. Obviously, we've been looking more and more at climate change here. One of the things the board has to keep in mind is we're having a cascade effect here. This is definitely impacting that area. But if you go beyond that and down to Riverdale Road, you're going to see there's a number of homes there that are in the direct line of that discharge area into the Manhan. As that water and flow increases, those homes become more at risk. So whatever goes on with any activity up at the farm area is going to have a cascade effect down on Riverdale Road. I'm not saying not to do anything. I'm just saying be aware of the fact that as like him, whatever upstream of him is impacting him, it's going to start impacting down on Riverdale Road too. That's all.
Now, we applied for the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant, and that is a climate change initiative that we have not heard yet from regarding getting funded for. Was there a project in mind?
No, this was just the application.
The application,
process.
okay.
Yep.
And then Fuss and O'Neill would help us if we get the grant to be able to prioritize.
Exactly.
What other questions does anyone have? Any questions? Well, it sounds like there's a fair, go ahead, Barbara, did you want to say something?
Please.
Sure.
Good evening, I'm Barbara LaFlamme, 20 Cook Road. Lifelong resident of Southampton. Basically, I got involved in municipal government in 1982. I came in with the Proposition 2.5, so that's how long. I believe that the underlying problem in this particular instance is the way that we allowed developers to tap into any available stormwater culvert that was close by. We did not pay enough of attention to roof runoff and parking lot runoff. And I totally agree with Mr. Fletcher, who believes that if we do more development, more parking lots, that will exacerbate the problem. The Fowles family has been the center of controversy for a very long time, which I believe was undeserved. I think anything that we can do to help the Fletcher family to restore their farm, we should do that. That was the intention, I believe, way back when, that this problem would be mitigated, and that when the project was done, the land that the town owned would revert and become part of the farm again. And I think the Fletchers are very good stewards of the farm. They want to be successful with their farming, and I think our municipality should do everything that we can to support that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Christina Madsen, Rattle Hill. $600,000 was
granted for this project. Does anyone know how much of that money was actually spent on the project?
Yes. Everything up
Do you
to,
want to
I
wrap that?
believe,
Jerry should.
there's approximately, I think, 12 to 14,000 left of the grant money. And that is supposed to be used to mitigate the erosion problem. It could be used in concert with the Fletchers. I mean, we could do some of the engineering, preliminary, as matching funds with whatever they get from MDR. It was specifically there to take care of any of the erosion. I think Randall Kemp, the highway superintendent, went out and did some work out there, but it was beyond what, the highway department could handle. So we still have that money that we can go ahead and get some engineering done and begin the process.
I guess I would have to ask, why hasn't that work already been done and that $12,000 or $14,000 been spent to help solve this situation? It seems as though the Fletchers have been dealing with this for years, and the town has been reluctant for years to bring it to a close. And I would like to recommend that we move this forward and get it back to the Fletchers so the problem can be solved, and to finish using the funds that are already designated for it to help mitigate the situation. It seems as though it's been a project of beating one's head against the wall to try to come up with a solution to this, and I feel badly for the Fletchers. They're trying to do their best. It was a bad situation right from the get-go, and I'm not sure it's been handled as well as it could have been. I urge you to bring it forward to town meeting. Barbara LaFlamme, 20 Cook Road. When I hear that we need more engineering studies, I have a great deal of difficulty with that. These tires were counted and recounted. There's this many, there's that many, there's this many, there's that many. And the amount of money that got spent on engineering, I think, accounts for a lot of the $600,000. The Fowles family was vilified for what they had done with the support of the Conservation Commission. They tried their very best. They spent a lot of money to defend their positions on specialists, on attorneys, and I think what happened to that family is a travesty. That's all I can say.
And obviously, we're not going to use the same engineers.
Well, that was one of my questions.
That's the bottom line.
I have two questions. One is I had heard that some of that $600,000 was used not so much for removing the tires, but also included trying to do some planting and other attempts, and they failed. They failed. So, I wasn't aware that there was continually to be. Is it in the a line item in the Board of Health budget that there's $12,000 to $14,000?
No, it's not in the Board of Health budget as a line item, but it's under the Board of Health control.
It's under the Board of Health control. Okay. Okay.
And I'm not suggesting that we do more engineering studies. I'm suggesting that we actually do the plan, the engineering plan.
Right.
That will facilitate getting, the erosion issue taken care of.
We'll definitely
Let's spend the dollars in the appropriate.
Plan of action, rather. Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But what I also heard was that there may have even been a document at the beginning when the land was transferred to the town that said something relative to that it would be returned to the farm.
Yes.
And that document seems to be missing, gone?
Yes.
Okay.
It was not recorded.
What I can tell you is a statement from the then head of the APR, Rich Hubbard, in the meeting said when he agreed to subdivide the land off so the town could access that money, he said, what I would like to see in the end here is that when the project is done, I don't want this piece of APR land to sit out here and deteriorate and not be kept up. And then
that happened.
It's exactly what he said he did not want. He said, I would like it rejoined with the farm when everybody is satisfied. And I approached the town almost immediately when the project was said, order of conditions have been met, and I was told by the town, you'll never get that land back. It will never be returned to you. And I waited for boards to change, and I actually was told the land would never be returned, and that was the ruling of the DEP. So I called the DEP, and they said, that's not our ruling. And they said, town can give it back to you anytime they want. But we had to go because of the legal part of this, like I believe, Lindsay, you said it to me, it is easier to take than it is to give back.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I do wonder, though, is if this was at town meeting and if the residents said, you know what, this is what we want, I don't understand why we have to say, oh, but this is what the legal people say we have to do. If it's the feeling of the residents, why can't it go that direction?
We've got legal proceedings we have to follow. That's the issue.
You have to get the, this.
Yeah, a lot of times your emotion versus the legal side of it are two different areas, and that's what I'm kind
I
of.
would get that if this was $1 million piece of property. But considering it was purchased for $1, I don't know that the town residents would I think they'd say, do the right thing.
But I don't think that the town residents can legally do it. We have to check with legal. But, working for the state, an item that costs $10, you just can't give it to somebody. You've got to, because the state funds and taxes have bought it, so you've got to go through a process. And that's where the emotional side is, yeah, you should have the land back, let's just give it to you. The legal side is, do we have to do a bid? Do we have to put a for sale sign out there? Do we have to get it estimated? Those are things we have to find out before we can do anything. And, again, the bidding and estimating and all that, I've spent 20 years in that career, and boy, it's strict. So we got to find out how we can do it legally, because if we said to you, we're going to give it back to you for $1, and then somebody down the road says, hey, I would have given you $5,000 for it, that's not fair. You're in a jam and we're in a jam. So we got to make sure how we do it is the proper way. So at the end of this, whoever owns it, owns it. And we got to put, my opinion is, we got to put conditions on whoever gets this land so that they'll fix it properly and maintain it.
And we also have to be freed of, some liability. We have to get the support of, that we're not going to end up, worse off, and we have to do the right thing to represent.
It has to stay as farming, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Well, I was just going to say that. Is this land developable?
Somebody can't just buy it. No.
Like not at all, not ever,
wanted to grow
not
Christmas
for any
trees
reason.
on it, I could have made a lot of money doing
Is that true?
that. We don't know that. I mean,
Well, you're not going to, it's wet.
There's also, there are other abutters too, so there needs to be, hearing. I mean, there's a number of steps.
Process.
Well, I also have.
Exactly.
I also have.
Can't pull it out of chapter.
rights to the property.
Right.
Okay,
And
so that,
so I don't want to lose those
yeah.
in this
And
process.
that would, if they're deeded rights, that would have to go into the bill of sale of whoever's buying it. So I think there's a lot of conditions that would go into
There are
it.
a lot of conditions, but I think that in the end, when you take a look, the logical thing is it belongs to the farm.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, right, we
wanna
just
make sure
have
the
to do it,
process- yeah.
right, follow the process. But it has to stay as farming property.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of support for this, being transferred, and that the town would release. You don't have any concerns whatsoever about having this land be back in your name, given the attempts to fix it haven't been successful, the non-guarantee of grant funds, even though they've given you sort of the word.
Feeling at this point is.
Yeah.
My feeling is, even if I went down there and moved a shovel full of dirt. It's more than what's been done in the last 18 years. And that's my feeling. I have done my homework on, talking with the MDR people. We just finished a drainage project on a field that was just above this.
Right.
And it was extremely successful. A field that we couldn't even drive a tractor on. We got 3 cuttings of hay off it this year. And so that part of it worked. And I look at this as several phases to fix this area. And it's, the underlying problem has always been the water and the erosion. So if we can do this in a series of phases, I think that we can get a hold of this thing and we can fix it.
Great.
It's not just the end on my US.
You're the ones always telling Bob to get up there, Cheryl. Come on.
Cheryl Fletcher. So one of the times, I think 2 years ago when we came before you about it, USDA, Rita Thibodeau is one of the engineers at USDA. Thank God Rita is still in her position. She's one of the constants. And she said, Cheryl, my file dates back to 1990 when you first came to town. And so she has watched the progression. And when we did the drainage grant a couple of years ago, she was there. And so this is somebody that, she's an engineer. They have really great resources. And so lots of times with the MDR grants, they work, they coincide. You can get, we have no idea financially what they're going to say if they say, this is $500,000 that the state will work, MDR, Food and Ag, will work with USDA and we'll look at solutions that is economical, feasible, not going to cause problems down on Riverdale, because we don't want that to happen. So are we concerned? Yes. But I agree with Bob. Doing something is better than nothing. And I looked back at how many select boards we've written to over the last 10 years, and we've written a lot of letters, so we have to do something.
Yeah.
I think we should put it to rest regardless.
I think so, too. I definitely.
So, Ed, I don't remember if we ever asked legal if there are other ways in the prescribed bidding of land. That's all I know about, so.
All depends on the value of the land, of what process you have to follow.
So we would have to get an appraisal.
Don't have to. Go by actually either assessed value or the APR value and utilize that.
And that legally we can do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the Department of Agriculture, though, would like to have an appraiser go out. They go out and do the appraisals on the agricultural property, and then you have an idea of exactly, the value of that property. But at that meeting, also, town council was on the phone for the conversation, and if I remember correctly, I think even with the current assessment from the assessors, we don't have to, it doesn't have to go to auction. So town council will probably kind of give you an idea of exactly what the process should be.
Yeah, so I'd like to get that in writing so we could follow it and get it done once and for all.
Okay, so you'll reach out to town council as a follow-up and.
I'll reach out to town council also.
Do you need a motion on the books just to make sure? Okay.
No.
And we'll add it to the agenda for next 2 weeks?
For the 26th.
Yep.
Yep.
We don't know the outcome, but at least we'll find out soon. How's that?
And we'll have an answer.
Yep.
Or direction.
Hopefully we'll be the select board that at least brings it forward and gets it on a town meeting, okay? I hope we can.
Now, do we have to get it on town meeting? Yeah, we do if we want to
We do,
sell it,
yeah.
regardless of how we
Depending on
do it.
who's in control of it, it would probably more than likely have to be released into the select board's hands to be declared as surplus property and disposed of.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll take a look at the next steps next time, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming again.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go back to some of the appointments and resignations. So Liz Plouffe, resignation letter from the Council on Aging Board. Liz is the Fletcher's daughter. She's a social worker. She's been a wonderful addition to the Council on Aging board. Her job is not allowing her to continue on the Council of Aging, so thank you to Liz for her service to the Council on Aging. Gloria York is resigning from the Finance Committee, and there's a nice letter thanking and appreciating the service to the town. Janet Brown, Open Space Review Ad Hoc Committee, term to expire June 30th, 2020. This is a reappointment. Yes. William Wells, Veteran Grave Officer, term to expire June 30th, 2020.
Do you want to go get Chris? You want me to get Chris?
Yeah, thank you.
And Mr. Wells is here, by the way.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you. Well, we'll wait for Chris to come in, then I'll just ask you to get up, and do you mind saying a couple words of your... Yeah, thanks, Chris. We were just reading the names of the appointments and resignations, and we haven't approved any of them yet, but William Wells, Veteran Grave Officer, term to expire June 30th, 2020. So thank you very much for stepping up. Now, is this a reappointment, or is this an initial appointment?
This would be an initial appointment. Mr. Frary was our Veterans Graves Officer who can no longer perform it, and you will actually know probably William Wells better by the name of David Wells. He is our custodian.
Right.
And,
no wonder. You're the one that wrote us a nice
repair
note,
person here in the town hall.
Oh, there you go. Nice to meet you then.
Nice to meet you.
So tell us about your interest in stepping up for the Veteran Grave Officer.
I do a lot with Veterans Affairs and also with cemeteries, past experience, so I can glide into this job and make it a very smooth transition. I promise you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for stepping up.
Quite welcome. Thank you.
That's a
All
good
right.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you. And then James Palermo, Council of Aging, so he will be stepping in to replace Liz Plouffe, who resigned for the remainder of her term. And his term would expire June 30th, 2020. And then Thomas Quinlan Jr., Building Commissioner, Zoning Enforcement Officer, term to expire June 30th, 2020. So.
Okay. You need a motion? Okay, I move to accept the resignations and to approve the appointments that you just mentioned.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And now we have the town administrator reports and the select board reports.
Give me about 5 seconds just to finish writing that.
Sure, well, that's right down. So we have liaison assignments, so we all report from our liaison committees. And this is Ed's report, so welcome to stay, or if you have to go, that's okay too.
All right, all set. Just to let you know, the pre-bid meeting for the Labrie Field House and site improvements and septic system was held on Wednesday, November 6th. Doucette Associates, who is handling the specifications and bid documents for the bidding process, has received a good amount of inquiries from contractors requesting bid packages. The sub-trade bids are due back to the town on Monday, November 18th at 1 p.m., and the general contractor bids for the project are due back to the town on Wednesday, December 11th at 1 p.m. and will be opened at the Park Commission meeting that evening at 6 p.m. Our state annual inspection of the town hall elevator was moved to Monday, November 25th. We have started to receive back the annual renewal applications, which we had sent out for liquor licenses, common victular, entertainment, and coin-op licenses and permits. Randall Kemp, Highway Superintendent, is working with VHB, Gallagher Enterprises, and Mass DOT to work out some issues with the Glendale Road Improvement Project. Most of the issues which are outstanding deal with the access issues, such as where or the size of the curb cut which was installed. One resident has asked about the drainage swale which is in front of their house and a couple of other residential homes. The biggest issue which has arisen is access to the barn at the corner of College Highway and Glendale Road, as the Glendale Road was lowered about 2 feet at this point. VHB is working with Gallagher and Mass DOT to resolve that issue. Once all the issues have been addressed, I am expecting that we will be able to get a comprehensive project update as to what remaining work will be done this year and what remaining work will be completed in the spring of 2020. We have received official notification that the town will be receiving the Hazard Mitigation Grant Award for the movement of the town water main onto the Manhan River Bridge on College Highway. I have an informational phone call scheduled with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency on Thursday in regards to the grant, and then we'll be working to complete the contract documents for this grant and have them signed and returned to MEMA. I have been contacted concerning our Community Compact IT grant application, which we filed with the state. The state will only fund one specific aspect of the request, which I filed on behalf of for Town Hall. The state will not fund the multiple facets of the project, which I requested on behalf of the town, which originally totaled $46,000. They will entertain an application for funding a new backup system for the town server and network, which will amount to about $3,000. We had the kickoff meeting to update our open space and recreation plan on Friday, November 1st. Emily Slotnick from the Pioneer Valley Planning Agency was here to help guide us through the project requirements and timelines. A public visiting session to garner public input is scheduled for Wednesday, December 18th at 6:30 p.m., and a survey will also be available to the town residents to help complete this process. Randall Kemp and I attended an informational session put on by DEP in Northampton on Thursday, November 7th, in regards to some of the changes which would be seen concerning a new contract with a materials recovery facility, otherwise known as the MRF or MRF, that are due to take effect with a new contract for July 1st, 2020. The town does have its choice of utilizing single-stream recycling or dual-stream recycling. It would appear that the option which will have the smallest negative impact on the transfer station enterprise budget will be to continue utilizing the dual-stream method which we are currently utilizing. No matter which option the town chooses, we will be faced with paying a per-ton cost for our recycling, where in the past the recycling tonnage fee has been either free or the town was actually paid for the tonnage of recycling which it processed. As more information is garnered and available, Randall and I will present that information to the Select Board at a future meeting. We have received the signed contracts back from Goosetown Enterprises for the replacement of the dispatch radio communication consoles at the police station, and from La Rochelle Construction for the replacement of the library asphalt and EPDM rubber membrane roof. Old business, we met with William Devlin from Devlin Architecture at the Old Town Hall for a tour of the exterior and interior of the building, and he will be presenting a proposal to perform an envelope study of the Old Town Hall at 8 East Street, and that meeting was held on Friday, October 25th. I was joined by Bob Kozub, Elise Bernier-Feely, and Don Warren from the Historic Commission, and Chief Illingsworth. Both Mr. Devlin and Jamie Reinhardt from Hill Engineers will be presenting proposals to perform the envelope study for the Old Town Hall to us. Upcoming Select Board meetings for November will be on the 26th, and I'll just remind everyone that that is 2 days before Thanksgiving, so is most of the board planning to be available for that meeting?
I am, yep.
Yeah, I won't be here.
You won't be? Okay.
I won't be here.
Okay. And then Select Board meetings for December so far. The 10th has been scheduled, and others are to be determined because of the holiday schedule. And I will remind the board that we will need a meeting in there someplace because it's the month that we do have to approve all the license renewals.
Okay.
And that's all I've got this evening.
Okay. Is everybody okay with looking at, going with these dates, and then as it gets closer, deciding how to handle any meetings around the holidays?
Sure.
Okay. Any questions about Ed's report?
No.
Good news about the grant for the water.
For the water main,
Yeah.
the hazard mitigation grant, absolutely.
Wonderful.
That's $518,000.
Right.
So, yeah.
Excellent. And any timetable involved in this?
After we get the contract documents signed and executed and back to them, I don't know how soon in the spring of 2020 we'll be able to actually get this out to bid and start, but that's one of the things we'll work on with the state. Yeah, and I'll be working with the water commissioners and the water superintendent on that timeline.
And that's to get the water directly underneath the bridge as opposed to in the water under the bridge, which will then allow the removal of the dam fully.
Correct. And then as part of the dam removal process, the old water main would be removed from being in the river. But this will be a much safer and less risky aspect for the town in the future should there ever be a flood through there or what have you. And it's in fact on the water main and the supply of the water to some town residents.
Great. Everybody good? Who would like to start with Select Board reports?
I'll only start because I have no updates. I was out of town celebrating my retirement, so.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations, yes.
I hope to do more of it.
Retire?
Yeah, no.
No, get on more
celebrate.
committees.
Yeah,
How's
there
that?
we go.
There you go.
Okay. You want me to go next?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to summarize 2 meetings from Hampshire Regional, since at our last meeting we didn't have an opportunity to share information. At the October 7th meeting, a parent documented, concerns about the breathalyzer testing policy, and that has since been placed on a moratorium until such time as they can adequately review and investigate what alternatives they might want to consider. All the schools within the region are reviewing a security camera policy, and that is soon to be finalized. But I don't have the final word if that's been approved by all 5 towns. The school committee approved the current contract that the teachers are working under. They accepted it. It had been approved and negotiated, but now the committee accepted it. The teachers in this year got a 1.5% increase for this year's contract, which expires, I believe, in August of 2020. So obviously we'll talk a little bit about how they're getting started with the new negotiations. And for administrators and paraprofessionals, there was a $500 increase per step. The final fiscal year 19 financial report showed a carryover of $261,867, which is permissible under the state regulations. And then looking at the meeting that was just held on November 4th, there was discussion about the parent portal that parents can access a couple of days a week to gather information from teachers about the students, and the students themselves can look and get information as well. So they want to do, I think they're looking at ways to better utilize that so that people are more satisfied with the process, I believe. They had a live, and I'm sorry Lindsay left, they had a live civics lesson because Lindsay Sabadosa, our representative, and Senator Hines held a joint town meeting for the students at the Hampshire Regional to give them, their introduction to this is your state government and this is how it works, which I thought was great. The security entrance at the Hampshire Regional that's been talked about, the construction project around that, will be completed by December of this year, and that's required by the funding that they got. The representative for this year's the representative for the 5 towns in the regional school district voted and selected an individual to represent those 5 towns on the contract negotiations team, and I believe it was a woman. No, a man from the finance committee from
He's
Williamsburg.
an attorney from the finance committee in Williamsburg.
The principal presented, reviewed the 10-year capital plan that she's laid out, and currently in fiscal year 20, and it's in and was approved for our budget, there's $50,000 for capital improvements. But with that plan and looking ahead, and this is something to keep in mind for fiscal year 2021, which starts July 1, the capital plan calls for $182,000, which is a substantial increase. But if you look at the projects, I mean, it's you don't have a choice with some of these things. I'm happy to report that the superintendent is updating the policies for the central office staff, something that hasn't been done for 15 years, which is amazing in terms of how, their increases, how they accumulate sick time and other benefit time. So looking at that, I think is a good thing. The MCAS results are out and available. I don't know how people can access them. But it's a pretty detailed bit of information that was shared at the meeting. The school, and I'll just summarize with this, is reviewing a number of policies, including tobacco, policy on background checks for all personnel, future and current, and also, looking again at the issue around the security camera. All of this is still is under consideration, and so I'll report when it's final. The other committee, do you have anything that you want to ask the two representatives from the school, the regional? Did I miss anything? Okay.
Charles Dudek is the
there is one thing, that there is an issue going on at the school, and it's being addressed by the school by the school committee in executive session, and that's really all I can say, because that's really all I know. I did participate in the MDAR committee, the MDAR meeting on the property that we were just discussing, and also in the open space and recreation planning group that took place last Friday. The master plan committee met. They will give their full report to the select board at its next meeting on November 26th, and that's covering the priorities it's recommending to the select board for goals going forward on what the town might be undertaking in the next several years. And I think that's about it.
Larson, 9 David, Hampshire Regional School Committee. In terms of the upcoming budget cycle, we will have a finance subcommittee meeting for the school committee immediately prior to our next meeting, which is in December. So we'll have that to kind of get the principal's first take at her budget. Following that, I hope to meet with FineCom, assuming we have a FineCom that's meeting and working. So I think we need some more people on there. And then tomorrow as well, the school council is meeting, and we'll look at the capital plan in more detail for the next coming year. So when that was first developed, it was about $100,000 per year or so that the principal was hoping, and then she had to cut that way down. But curriculum alone can be $50,000. So we're just trying to work through that and see where we can meet our needs. But my expectation this year is that there will be a lot more conversations with you and with FineCom, so that no one's surprised when the budget is developed and released, and then we have to make decisions about it. All right.
So it sounds like what happened last year won't happen this year, because it was just kind of sprung on the finance committee at the one meeting, and you had to vote on it right away. So it sounds like you're backing up a little.
I think that we're just, every year I think we're getting better.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Good.
Right.
Any other questions? No.
Thank you. Anything else, Francine?
No, that's it.
Matt, any updates?
Yeah, PQB's is still working on getting some background information with regard to query checks. I don't have any updates on capital committee and school committee. It's been a while since we met, so a couple of cool things that have happened there along the lines of Veterans Day. That was extremely well attended. It always is, the breakfast with veterans at the elementary school. It's a touching event. I did not attend because I'm not a veteran, but my son describes this fairly well, and it's a great time at the school, and they take a great deal of pride in that. Backing up a little bit further, Trunk or Treat was really well attended as well this year. It grows in attendance every single year. It's amazing what people do with their cars and their trunks to decorate them for Halloween, and the kids love just running around. It's before daylight savings time, so it's still pretty bright out at that point in time. Coming up later in our agenda, we do, and I circled it, but we do need to nominate someone to be part of the upcoming teacher negotiations. I know we just kind of settled that, but we're going right back in, given that it was only a 2-year agreement. And that's it.
Great. Chris?
Okay, well, unfortunately, I have a little bit lengthier one, just because I've been involved in many committees over the last 2-3 weeks here.
And Chris has been nice enough to cover me for Council of Aging, because I've had some work conflicts, and I will continue up through the January meeting.
Right. So the first one, Board of Assessors, basically pretty much routine business. They've been reviewing a good number of Chapter 61, 61A and B applications. I'd say, I don't have an exact number, but I'd say at least 35 have probably come before the Board of Assessors to look at, as well as some of these senior and veterans exemption requests as well. So that's been pretty much routine. The Bylaws Advisory Committee is really starting to move along. We are still in need of another member. Somebody with management or administrative experience would be great. But nonetheless, we've been reviewing and have already made our recommendations, which I think will be on the agenda later tonight, about what the charge for the bylaw committee should be in terms of our membership and our main duties. But basically, the committee's been looking at some 40 to 45 bylaws that are currently, the general bylaws that are currently on the website, and some of them are definitely needing revisions and either town and or attorney general approval. Some might have been approved at one point but never made it all the way through the process to even be published. So we're, as a committee, aiming to finalize and update and edit probably 20 bylaws. That's kind of our goal, to be presented to the Select Board in time to be included in the warrant for the next special town meeting, hopefully early in 2020. We're verifying that the most current versions are more user-friendly, that duplicative information is minimized, and we're having the relevant committees provide input on the language that we're drafting, just to be sure that we're okay with their own purview. CPC, Community Preservation, there's a public hearing tomorrow night here in this room at about 6:30. This is going to be the annual report out to the town on activities supported during the past year, as well as a call for proposals for 2020. As a reminder, the proposals for projects fall into open space, recreation, community housing, and historic preservation categories. The residents are invited and have been invited to download the application from the website and then come and present their ideas in person tomorrow, even if their proposals are not yet complete. Tomorrow's not a deadline for applications, as far as I know. It's kind of an open meeting to ask questions and understand what can and cannot be asked for through the CPC funds. Council on Aging, as Rena mentioned, I sat in on the board meeting for her. Basically, there's been great enthusiasm for the pickleball initiative that was launched over the summer, with some 25 different enthusiasts learning the game and enjoying the outdoor exercise. And for those that don't know, pickleball is kind of a hybrid, I guess I would say, between tennis and ping pong, more or less, played with a very short handle racket and something that sort of looks like a wiffle ball. But anyway, it's reportedly the fastest growing sport across the country, and it's really great that Southampton is a part of this. It's actually one of the few intergenerational sports, and so efforts are also being made now that we can't be outdoors anymore to approach, and I think a meeting has already happened up at Norris, to see whether or not we might be able to use some of the facilities on the off hours or on the weekends to play during the winter months, as well as perhaps involve and teach the 6th graders how to play pickleball, so that it really can be an intergenerational activity. The COA director reported on a number of recent activities that they've done over the past month, a lot of well-attended meetings in terms of health discussions, hospice and palliative care, among others, as well as the Thanksgiving luncheon that they held recently, which had about 50 people in attendance. And then especially the board was also glad to have Jim Palermo volunteer to step in and fill in the vacancy for the board. And hopefully this will encourage other men in town to be active users of the COA services. So that was really a very positive thing from our point of view. Concom, this is probably where there's a lot of things, but I'll try to summarize here. So aside from the usual business of looking at notices of intent and new construction and wetlands issues, there was a public hearing held on October 21st to discuss a proposed ecological restoration project, which is, as you may know, the Lyman Pond Dam. The dam currently doesn't serve any purpose and has no fish passage facilities. So the goal of the project is to restore the ecological processes and remove an unsafe dam, and this would result in the improvement in fish passage and the sediment transport downstream. The Division of Ecological Restoration, the Southampton Water Department, American Rivers, the Nature Conservancy, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are involved with the project, and relocating, as Ed mentioned, the town water line to hang underneath the bridge on College Highway must happen first prior to removing the dam, as well as any plan for any endangered species along the waterway. So that's starting early discussions, but it sounds like it's got a lot of support. Two requests, I guess, coming before us. As you know, I think I reported once before after the microburst of a few weeks ago now, that caused some serious damage at the Manhan Meadows area to the point that ComCom has posted it closed on both entries, basically on the interest of public safety. It's really necessary, though, to get the fallen trees taken care of so that we can get the trails open again. And there are about tree companies that have had some knowledge of the Manhan Meadows area, but none have been in there since the microburst to see how bad it is. And since it's town property, we were hoping that we would be able to ask that we could ask the town administrator, I guess, to solicit some estimates for what kind of work might need to be done to sort of rectify the situation. It needs to be looked at, the entire trail needs to be looked at, not just from the East Street side, but from also the Brickyard Road extension side. And so it really would require somebody walking the entire thing and looking at the severity of the fallen trees. So there's not only the fallen trees, but there's a lot of overhanging the trail trees, commonly known as the widowmakers, which are the real dangerous ones that really need professional people to take care of. So we're kind of hoping that we could get some estimates at the CONCOM level so that they would be able to apply for some funding, and they were looking to see whether or not that might also be eligible for CPC funding. There's been some changes in the CPC requirements, and apparently restoration of trails rather than maintenance of trails could be a possibility. So we'd like to bring that forth to see whether or not we could request that some estimates be gathered to help CONCOM move forward on this. And then just a question, CONCOM is looking for some legal advice, I guess, to see whether it's possible to be reimbursed for the cost of recording an enforcement order when they have to do these orders at the Hampshire Registry of Deeds. People pay up front according to the fee schedule for the various other things that CONCOM does, and those are not issues, for the published notices in the Gazette, and all those things are taken care of. But sometimes when there is an enforcement order, it's because somebody's done a violation, and depending on the circumstances, it might be appropriate to even have an enforcement order attached to somebody's property deed. And so CONCOM doesn't feel like they should be able to, or need to be able, with their limited money, absorb that cost, and they were liking us to figure out whether there would be some legal advice to say whether or not we have the right, or they have the right, to ask the violator to pay the cost of an enforcement order. So those are two sort of requests before the select board tonight. The one on getting estimates on Manhan Meadows, and then the idea of consulting legal counsel. And lastly, CONCOM is desperately in need of 2 people to serve on CONCOM. We are very much short and are managing with a quorum, but it would really help if we can find 2 members that are really interested in serving on the committee. Thank you.
Questions for this? No. So, up till now, has the Concom been paying for the enforcement orders?
I believe they have, yeah. They haven't had to have too many of them done. I mean, it's not a terribly common practice, I think, where somebody does something that really requires an enforcement order, but, you know, they have a very, very limited budget, and would like to see whether or not that could be taken or put toward the violators paying it rather than
How much does
Concom.
it cost?
You know, I'm thinking around $100, but I'm not positive on that. I'd have to check with Marla on that. I don't know that I know that for sure.
I got to think, coming to somebody who's a violator and say, I want $100 to go forward with this order, you're probably not going to collect right away. I mean, it's a good idea, but what's the enforcement behind it?
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge is, you know, how can it be enforced? Because right now, if there's somebody that does violate it, they can put out an order, but if they don't, if they don't abide by it, Concom has kind of, you know, got their hands tied. And I think that's the frustration is what can they do to, you know, correct the situation rather than letting that violation stand.
What do other towns do?
I'm not able to answer that. I can find out, though, at our next meeting.
Do you know, Ed, what other towns do relative to enforcement orders?
They would probably have to pay for them straight out, but other towns, if they've adopted a conservation bylaw, may be able to fine to recoup some of those costs. But I'm happy to find out what the parameters here are for them.
Great. That'd be good. Thank you. Yeah.
I guess the other question that had to do with the microburst there, and it's, I mean, right now, we don't have a line item in our budget to, you know, to do an estimate on, like, fixing that. Was that a request of Concom to have town funds be used to do an estimate of that property?
At this point in time, I think they were looking for an estimate, because right now, all they know are perhaps hourly rates. They have no idea what the job would entail, because it's really pretty severe, and it really takes somebody looking at all of that before it snows and before everything is buried, so they know the real severity of the amount of trees that have to be moved. And just to be clear, I didn't think I mentioned that, but nothing is to be removed out of there. It's simply pushing it off the trail. Right. So everything is just going to stay in place, but especially cutting down the overhanging ones. But they needed some kind of estimate so that they could then try to think about applying for CPC funds, for example. That was where they were going with it. I mean, if worse comes to worse and that doesn't work, then we might be putting it forth as a budget item going forward. I don't know.
But I think if I heard Maureen correctly, she may be asking the question, if we had to pay someone to get that estimate, how are we going to pay for the estimate?
Oh, okay.
Is that where you were going with that?
Pay for that estimate. I can't imagine you'd have to pay for
You may in this
Somebody's gonna want
particular.
that work.
Well, here's where this comes out, is we have no idea what the cost may be. So I can't tell you if, okay, is it between $10,000 and $50,000, which would lead to me to saying, okay, we're going to have to go out and get at least 3 quotes, advertise on combis, blah, blah, blah. Or is it going to be $60,000 or $75,000 where we got to go out for sealed bids? And with either of those, you don't just send people out to say, this one, this one, this one, and this one, what are you coming back with? You actually have to put a list together of the exact work you want done so that they're all bidding on apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So yeah, to get to that point, we actually may have to pay someone to get an estimate of the work and an actual list of what they think is being done.
So you'd have one person kind of do a review of what needs to be done, and then that person would give you kind of the specs of what need to be done, and then that would be what would go out to bid to others to bid about.
Well, once we know that, and we know that, okay, it's estimated at 25, I'm just going to throw a figure out, and I think it's going to be more than 25 grand, but I'll just throw out 25 grand. Well, at that point in time, we know, okay, we're going to fall into the parameters of asking for quotes on this particular work and follow that particular procurement method. It also gives us the ability and the Concom to either say, okay, here's the figure that we're going to use to go to CPC and request funds, or if they were going to request funds from the town to go forward with that process of what that might be.
And is there a dollar floor in terms of when we have to request the 3 bids? Is there Is it anything over $10,000 or?
3 quotes is between 10 and 49,999.
Okay.
50,000 above is sealed bids.
Sealed bid, okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
I have a question. Lucy Dalton, 10 Strong Road. Is this something the tree warden could get involved in to look at the trail? And also, did Open Space do a trail clearing day?
Yeah, we had a day, it happened to be the hottest day of the summer, where we did from the East Street to the bridge. We had 13 volunteers, and it was no sooner than a week or two later where the whole trail got wiped out.
Okay, I was wondering if that was something that
But you know
could be
that,
done there.
yeah, the tree warden, I don't know that, I mean, there's not a lot of
I would doubt
funds, you know, in his budget either.
Yeah, and from what I'm told about the damage and the hanging trees is that it's beyond and maybe dangerous for volunteers to go in and do some of this work.
Yeah, it really has to be professionals, but thank you, that's a good thought.
Yeah. So.
But I'm happy to do, I'm happy to do the groundwork for them. I will just try to, right now I'm trying to finish up the RFP for the audio video equipment for this room.
Great.
But so I'll try to fit it in kind of when I've got some downtime from that.
Yeah.
Can you let me know when you do submit that or put that up for a bid, the work for the Easthampton media?
Oh, absolutely.
Because once you do, I want to reach out to the executive director from Easthampton Media, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Great, thanks. So thank you for reporting on the Council of Aging and for going in my place. Board of Health met, they reorganized. As you remember, there are 2 new members, Rebecca Dubé and Charlie Kinnicky, so they reorganized. Shelley O'Connell is still the chair until the election. Excuse me, they're working on Budget 2020. They are working in conjunction with the schools and the Emergency Management Director to update some of the emergency protocols. They're looking at animal regulations and also cooling and heating sites. Open Space Review Committee is addressing the proposal to have it be a standing committee versus an ad hoc committee, and have approved mission, goals, and strategies. And this Thursday at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the library, is the initial meeting for anybody who might be interested in forming a 501c3 Friends of Conservation organization. Is there anything else you'd like me to say, Chair? Okay.
Anyone is invited to that?
Anyone's invited. Yep. So please consider, it's a good committee to be part of, is to establish a 501c3 Friends of Conservation group for donations of trail maintenance and such. Okay, that's it on the committee reports. Any other comments or questions?
You don't have a planning board rep.
No, actually, I wrote right here, planning board. There was a meeting of the planning board. Go ahead and remember the planning board if you'd like to just report. So this was a public hearing regarding the land adjacent to the Opa's JP restaurant.
Right. So maybe at some point the select board can have a planning board rep, but.
Actually, I'm the planning board rep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When I was in South Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Don't be sorry, it was a fun time.
So outside of just routine business, there was this hearing that was, it's pretty interesting because I think this entire room was filled, and a lot of people spoke, and the developers who have already purchased the land are essentially putting forth an application to be considered for a zoning change. And we had a representative from PVPC, and it was, I think, a very good conversation that evening. A lot of people spoke. But ultimately, because there was so many people from their town who spoke in against the idea of the zoning change, the planning board unanimously, those who are present, one person had to recuse himself because he's professionally connected to the project. But they all agreed that there wasn't anyone speaking in favor of this zoning change, and there is strong opposition based on the fact that it's across the street from a historical cemetery. It's abutting the historical area of our town. And it would be nice if it was developed as a residential area. So let's hope
And I
that
think
these...
a lot of people had traffic concerns.
And that's
Safety.
correct. Traffic being a big concern. And our police chief was able to give some good statistics about actual accidents that met a certain criteria at that corner. So I'm glad to have the people listening tonight hear the results. I don't know if it's going to go to town meeting or not. I don't know if they're going to fall through with that or not for the zoning change.
And kind of, Rini, if you can, in conjunction with that, my understanding is, and I may be wrong, but understanding that the old OPA is under contract to be sold to a group for a church.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, so there's some traffic there, and if you have a retail establishment, and those two parcels are funny shaped,
They are.
you know, and it's right next to some historic building and the farm, so it's going to be interesting.
Thank you. Okay, so we already talked about the town-owned parcel, College Highway, the MDAR. Ed gave us an update on the Old Town Hall envelope study. And East Street Bridge, Mass Works.
That design is moving forward now that Mass DOT has let VHB know that they can plan for a sidewalk bike path combination on one side of the bridge rather than having both of those on both sides of the bridge. So I will keep you updated as that moves forward.
Okay, thank you. Any further updates, bylaws review committee charge discussion? Chris, you gave us a little bit of an update. Anything else?
I think we've included in the packet the proposed, we had a draft from Ed, sorry, and we had gone through as a committee and recommended that it be a permanent committee and bylaws committee, a review, yeah, hello, a bylaw committee, right? Yeah, I'm going to find it here. And the number of times we would meet, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have in your packet is both the draft we worked from as well as the proposed charge that we kind of recommended. It was kind of a multiple choice on things that Ed had presented to us as a draft, which if I can find it right here. So to be basically the bylaw review committee as opposed to the bylaw advisory committee. Members should be registered voters of the town. Terms should be 3 years each. Just some of the key things. The town clerk would be an ex officio member. Basically, we would try to meet, let's see, I'm losing this here, at a minimum bi-monthly going forward.
Yeah.
And I think the questions that were there were, we needed to ask the select board to designate the terms of the existing members. As you know, this has been a committee that's been evolving and revolving over time with different members, and the existing members do not really have a specified term of appointment, and so we wanted to have that designated for the existing members, which there are 3 right now. I believe my appointment is a 3-year one, but that would be for Francine, Virginia, and Janine would be the 3 that would need some term appointments.
And we do have 1 vacancy.
And 1 vacancy, right. And then there was a request here, because there was talking in the charge about holding a public meeting or public hearing on some of these things that would have to be published for 2 weeks prior to a hearing in the newspaper. And so the question was, who would pay for that? Is that the department requesting a bylaw change, or a citizen, if it's in that case? Who pays for that notification to the newspaper to publish it? Because obviously bylaws doesn't have any money. So if it was a bylaw relative to some department in town, would they be the ones that would have to pay to post it, to pay us to post it, I guess? So there were 2 outstanding questions, but otherwise, I think it reads fairly well. So you have in the packet one that's marked draft, and so then there's one right after that, and so it's the one after that that we're looking at as sort of the final version.
lot of the language is similar to the template for meetings and how often, and election of officers and so forth.
Right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Any thoughts on the questions that they raised about the terms, and also who would pay for any hearings, bylaw postings? Any thoughts?
And actually, A through H were multiple choice also. You can pick all of those, none of those, any of those. G, which is the one for holding the public hearings, was one that I had left in here from a very smaller community. I might suggest that you might think about not leaving that requirement in because it will be costly.
Which one?
G.
G.
The one
Yeah.
requiring the public hearings.
I think someone said it would be at least $100 for each ad.
At least.
Yeah.
If not more.
So-
It depends on the number of words.
Yeah, so it's, I'm okay with that.
You mean not having the public hearing before the town meeting? Is that what you're saying? It almost,
I didn't hear you.
are you saying don't hold the public meeting prior to a town meeting?
I'm saying don't hold a public hearing.
Public hearing, I'm sorry, yes.
It's not required then, obviously.
Now, it just seems like that may bring some issues up before you bring it to the town meeting that could be corrected before.
Well, you could require like that they hold a public meeting on it without the requirements of a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so it could be a meeting rather than a hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And then you're not obligated to post the ad and so forth, if we have a public meeting as
You don't
opposed to
have
a
the
public
initial
hearing.
cost of
Okay.
advertising in a local newspaper.
Okay.
No. You can put it out there on, on the website, on the bulletin board, and what have you, but you would not have the additional cost of.
Okay.
Yes.
So if this is revised, the committee shall hold one or more public meetings instead of hearings, basically, and then everything else would remain the same with, the advance notice and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And I think at the bottom of that, the end of G, where we underline things, the wording that is crossed out, it was a little bit vague, just saying planning to propose, and we wanted it stronger, recommending saying proposing, and then substantively amending. If it's just a little tiny amendment, we didn't think a public meeting needed to be held, but if there were substantive amendments being proposed, then that was when some sort of a public meeting needed to be held, probably. So just some minor wording changes.
And what about the other question about the term of existing members? I mean, people are appointed, I mean, they're appointed annually, right?
Maybe appointed for
You'd have some
multiple.
coming up theoretically every year.
Yeah.
And for existing appointees, I would probably suggest just taking you could either, well, if you're going to change the committee, you could actually say you're looking at new appointments, and then just follow this.
Yeah, do a 3-2-1. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the initial, that makes sense.
Right, you're going to start new.
And Chris already has a 3, right?
I do, I think,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
All right.
Do you want to send this back for a final copy by law, since we have time before the town meeting anyway? Or do you want to go ahead and endorse it in some way, or what would you like to do? What would I mean, 2 out of 5 are committee members here. What was your hope?
No, I would, with these changes, I'm fine endorsing it. I just.
Yeah, we had discussed it in committee already,
Right.
so I think
Okay.
everybody's on board with these proposed changes. So just changing out hearing for meeting.
Okay.
Instead in Part G, that would
And
be.
then not providing the rest of the detail, right?
Right, we might include that the last sentence or two, but I mean, the notion about publishing, we would take out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there may still be a needing for engage in discussion and clarification of proposed amendments or additions. That would be the purpose of the meeting rather than a formal hearing per se, right?
Okay.
No, I think this has been
I'll
around
try
a long time.
updating it for the next meeting and send it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Let's just have a revised version since there's plenty of time, and I thank you for doing that work.
Yeah, thank you
And
both.
then next meeting, can we set the terms? I mean, select the candidates and set the term limits?
Sure.
Okay, just so that everybody knows. Good.
Great.
Okay, we're on to new business. Chapter 61 land, notification of sale and right of first refusal, Fulmer Road, map 27, parcel 6, lot 1, 1.378, and lot 2, 1.536, Charles M. Fisher Living Trust. This land was notification of our right of first refusal and the Conservation Commission, I believe.
Concom is the only one that has weighed in on it so far. They recommended that the town waive its right of first refusal. Planning Board has not taken it up as of yet, and I have not heard back from the Board of Assessors if they have taken this up as of yet. So hopefully I will know those pieces by the 26th.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there's 3 parcels, not just 2.
Yeah.
One's on the back side of the paper. So it's parcel 6, lot 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Just for edification, I thought there was a minimum amount of land before it went into Chapter 61. These are 1 point something acres. Wasn't there like 10 acres or something minimum?
I didn't know any of that.
It depends on if this is contiguous to something else, which it may be. I think they're just trying to carve these out, but I can check with the Board of Assessors on that.
So you think they're maybe trying to carve these out of a larger Chapter 61 parcel?
It's
Might be.
possible.
I'm thinking 5 acres is the minimum, but I may be wrong on that.
Yeah, but these are, odd. Yeah, 1.378. So maybe you can just let us know if it's being carved out.
Yeah, 5 acres.
Yeah.
No wonder, yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And this comes up to about 4.5, so. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
check
if
on
you
that.
can
I'm just
find out.
curious, yeah.
Yeah.
Secondly, there is notification of removal from Chapter 61 without sale or change of use, College Highway, map 19, parcel 141, map 19, parcel 144, and map 24, parcel 15. Total acreage is 51.9 plus or minus. Eugene R. Labrie. Notification purposes only, no action required.
And just to be clear, I mean, what he's saying here, apparently according to this form, is that he's not intending to he's not intending to sell it, not intending to
Or change
convert
the
it.
use. Correct.
Just wants to withdraw it from chapter land and keep it without a change in use. So he's apparently going to keep it as forest land is what this form tells us now.
Okay.
So this is a newly designed form that helps people determine or tell us what the intent is at the Board of Assessors level,
Okay.
what their intent is with the land when they want to withdraw it.
And what's the date of that?
Well, there's a date on here, November 5th. I think originally when he had submitted something to Board of Assessors, he had forgotten one of the parcels
Correct. So,
and had
yeah,
redone it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
yes. So this is an update.
Stamped on November 5th as having been received.
That's when we received it, correct?
Yeah.
So I guess I got to ask a question. Has there been any update on this as far as how it relates to public safety complex?
No.
I don't think there's been a single Public Safety Committee meeting.
Well, that's because there's been, as far as we know, there's been no movement on this.
Okay. I mean, are there other
There was one.
items for them to be looking at, or no?
Well, there was one about a month ago. That was the last one. So I'm going to talk to Charlie about putting another one together because we got to decide what to do here on public safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there was one scheduled, but one was canceled as well.
Right.
It was
one
canceled,
scheduled
yeah.
to be canceled.
Yeah, they're waiting on the lawyers.
What's
Yeah.
that?
They were waiting on the lawyers.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Your lawyer and their lawyer.
yeah. And that's why I asked Ed if there was any more update on that, but
I think it actually has to do with some health issues.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
say,
yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
all health related.
that in there too, yeah.
Yep. We discussed the Hendrick land donation, and now town revenue and expenditure reports.
Okay. I just want to say, line by line, I have no questions on the revenue report. I know and I understand that they can't post the estimated revenue. If you notice, most of them are zeros when they list what they expect to get in. And yet, we are 1/3 through the year, and we have actual $3.4 million in. And if I look at our budget, 1/3 of the way through the fiscal year, we should have 5.8. So I know it's always a timing thing, but it's for me anyway, personally, and when I was working, I always needed to know what was in the pipeline. And so, just knowing where we are in relation to our goal is an important thing for us to keep in front of us.
So maybe we could have the treasurer collector at next meeting?
Did you hear that, Ed?
No.
Perhaps have treasurer collector at our next meeting?
Sure.
Like I said, you don't know how much you have to cut if you don't know how much you're earning. Hopefully none, but...
No, and usually it's a timing thing. I'm just...
Right. But like I said, 4
I
months
just
in.
need to be reassured that that's what it is, okay?
Want a warm and fuzzy, huh? No, you're right, though. 1/3 of the way in.
I had just a couple of notations regarding expense, but before I do, did anybody have any other comments or questions about the revenue? I think the expense is, like I said, we're just over
That's for 4 months,
basically. And so ambulance fees are 109% on the expense side. And health director's salary is 40-something%. And if you remember correctly, we had asked the Board of Health to relook at that. And at the meeting, Charlie and Jerry were meeting specifically to discuss the 2020 budget. Anything else?
Did they have any comments on where they're going right now, or they're still discussing it?
Nope, they're still discussing it, and I think that Charlie had offered to have a sort of a one-on-one with Jerry, since he's new in the committee and Rebecca's new in the committee, to really kind of look at where the budget stood and get kind of updated on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Rini, I do have one question, sorry.
Sure.
On the expense report on the road construction fund part, this Chapter 90, FY 17, 18, and 19, I'm just not totally clear on all of how that works. And I see for 17, we've got a negative balance, but I'm assuming that somehow it gets ironed out in the wash with the 18 and 19 budget, or does money have to go back, or what happens with that? It's on page 6 on the expense report, road construction fund. So it shows a negative balance of negative 24,000 for FY 17, and then a positive 305 and a 305,000 and a positive 378,000 for FY 18 and 19. I just don't understand how it works. So if anybody could explain that to me.
The 24,000 would just need to be allocated to fiscal year 18.
But it's overdrawn, right? They spent more than they had, so this will be taken out of FY 18.
Comes out of
It's all cumulative.
Cumulative? Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I didn't understand. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, any representative to Norris Elementary School negotiations. So is there interest in this committee of someone who would like to?
I thought John did an excellent job last time. John, that's my personal take on it. I don't know if
You're free and clear from the Hampshire Regional negotiations.
Yeah. I mean, last time I had, one of the issues I had with both is that the timing is
Yeah.
pretty much on the teacher's schedule, but as I said before, I'm newly retired, so apparently I have more time. So.
I mean, you have all the backstory of it, too.
You're supposed to.
What?
Depends.
Yeah, and Claire says keep them busy. No. Yeah, so that's fine.
Good. Want to make a
I would like to nominate John Martin to be our representative for the teacher negotiations.
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. All those
John.
in favor?
You're welcome.
Aye.
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 Thank
Thanks,
you very
John.
much for stepping up. Appreciate that. And I don't.
Did
is
you
there a date yet
vote in
on
favor of that too, John, or did you abstain?
I didn't vote, I abstained. No. No. I'm just kidding, that's fine.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. I thought it was
Yeah.
5-0, but.
Is there a date for that yet?
One, I don't think there is. I haven't seen one come out yet.
Okay. We have no PCFs, and we have no licenses and permits, so we have warrants.
Okay, we have a payable warrant in the amount of $188,319.64. A payroll warrant in the amount of $291,353.17. Payable warrant 20-17C in the amount of $1,329.78. A payable warrant W20-17V as a credit of $1,273.62, and a payment warrant W20-19 of $1,691,368.62, which included the quarterly payment to Hampshire Regional for their operating and their capital expenses.
Any questions on the warrant?
I have one on warrant 2013. And I think, Ed, you touched on it maybe in your report, but just maybe to expound on it a little bit. There's some funds for Labrie Field Phase 2, and I was just curious is that the septic system for Labrie Field, or the irrigation system, or what's going on there? It's the Doucette and Associates that you mentioned there.
There's so many phases to this. I can't remember if the irrigation was phase 2 and this is 3, but this next phase that is currently out to bid, it consists of constructing of the field house, installation of the septic system, and a playground facility, and I believe there's also like I don't want to say stockade fence, but like a post and rail fence, and then as an add alternate, a batting cage.
Okay. So that takes me back then to the financial report, because I saw a balance for community preservation, like $1.5 million. So the money that's going to go from CPC to pay for these improvements at Labrie Field has not been encumbered, so it's just still hanging out there as if the money was available.
Yeah, let me see if they have it in the report or not. Hang on.
Let me.
John.
I'm trying to go back to the page on the revenue.
While you guys are looking, John, the teacher negotiation meetings, this starts just for setting ground rules this Friday at 3:30 at Norris.
Okay, do you know who's chairing it?
I don't know. I'm getting my information from Aaron Kuchar right now.
Okay, so in the library?
In the library at Norris, yep, this Friday, 3:30, and just to set ground rules.
Okay. Do you know if this is the first meeting? Because it seems like there should be a meeting with separate committees before they sit down and set ground rules. You know.
I believe this is the first meeting, yeah. I don't think there's been.
Well, our committee should meet, see what ground rules they want, and then the union committee should meet, so when you get together, you kind of have a sense.
Yeah, let me ask.
Maybe it is just our side.
Yeah, that's what we can find out, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the 465, 168 would be the remaining balance from what was originally allowed from the CPC, because actually, as I think back, phase 2, they split into 2 portions, the irrigation portion and then the field house portion, because they could actually bid the irrigation system under horizontal construction, where as soon as they went to the field house, they had to do it under Chapter 149 building construction, so they split it apart. So this is the remainder of that.
Any other questions? Documents for signature, the MassWorks grant contract.
Yes, and the board previously had authorized Randall Kemp to be the contract manager and myself to be the signatory, but after a good amount of time, and I know Mr. Rowland will be extremely happy that we've actually got black and white in front
Absolutely,
of us.
I'm excited.
Black and white in front of us, so
Stop taking my Pepto-Bismol.
So tonight what the board should do is vote to authorize the chair to sign this document, which basically states that she is the President, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Fiscal Officer. In this case, she's the Chief Executive Officer, and she's basically leading into the next page, which I will have to sign in front of the town clerk and have it notarized and the town clerk sealed tomorrow. She is signing that, yes, I am the authorized signatory for this contract. And there's 2 of these that will go off to the state. One, when they execute their side of it, they will keep, and they will send the other original back to us for our records.
So you want a motion on that?
If you would, please, to have Maureen Groden sign as the chair, authorizing me to be the signatory.
So I'll make a motion that we authorize Maureen to sign, to authorize you to sign the paperwork.
Okay, and I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So John, Francine, okay?
John made the motion, Francine.
John, this is the first meeting, and it is with the teachers.
Okay, thanks.
I'm here.
Yes.
So much, thank goodness for text. Yeah.
Okay, minutes. There are 4 sets of minutes. Did everybody get a chance to review them?
Yep.
Let's start by looking at May 14th. Any questions or edits?
Remember any on that one?
Looks okay to me. All right, want to go on to the next one and approve them all together?
Sure.
Okay, June 11th, regular town meeting.
I guess my only thought was that it seems like we mentioned a couple of things that we needed to follow up on, and I'm hoping that we don't lose track of things that we need to follow up on. There was something about we need to put out an RFP for consulting services on the, what was it, for the Mass DOT TIP program or something? Under the Greenway Committee report. And there was something else that I saw. There was something, too, about the, hang on. The school council doing, no, that wasn't it. That was to get a copy of the school improvement plan about some of their priorities, especially with the student anxiety issue, which I don't think I've seen if it's been distributed. So to me, it's just follow-up things that are mentioned. There's a lot of stuff in here, but I just want to be sure that we don't lose track of something that we need to follow up on.
Yeah.
And then the last one was on some review on the PQB rules and regulations. I know there had been a draft, but I don't know if those have been reviewed and if we have to still work on those, or...
They were actually approved by the select board.
Were they? Okay.
PQB rules and regulations, yes. And regarding the, I'm not sure about the TIP. Any updates, Ed, on that? I have to find it on the agenda. Can you let us know. We'll
It's
hear.
under it's on the second page.
I was actually not at this meeting. Yeah.
That's the June 11th meeting?
Yeah.
June 11th, it's under the Greenway Committee report, quarterly report. It's the very last line or two.
Yes.
Showing that we were serious about proceeding with the Greenway. We have to do something to show that we're moving, even though we know we're constrained for funds, et cetera.
Yeah.
Well, we need a funding source to do that, which we currently do not have. And it was actually one of the things that I talked with the chair about recently, of considering either for CPC or capital funding, of requesting funding for this, and then also actually the actual procurement or the purchase of the right-of-way, on the theory that if they don't submit anything to CPC, the answer is automatically no. However, if they submit something to CPC and that either House 1790 or Senate 83 goes through, that would allow CPC funds to be utilized where rail banking is basically in process. If that occurred before community preservation made their final decisions, that then they would be able to consider that request.
What was the third thing, Chris, though?
There was something about, the school improvement plan. It's saying that we'd all get a copy. It's done every year. They pick an initiative, and they're dealing with... It's under Hampshire, I believe.
Francine, would you mind asking about that?
Sure.
It's
the school improvement.
Mentioned that they're dealing with student anxiety this year, apparently.
How is that the school improvement plan?
Right.
As opposed to the capital plan? We have
No, I think they're separate.
I think it was a separate issue. Yeah, it sounded like it was a separate issue, but
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe it's
All right.
the way it's written.
I will check.
I don't know.
I remember it being a separate issue, and it's not tied into capital expenses. Has more to do with culture.
Substantive kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
Obviously, it means dollars and cents somewhere, but yeah.
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 But really, okay.
Thank you. Anything else on these minutes? And we'll move on to the next ones, which are October 2nd.
Hang on.
There is one edit that I saw, Ed, on, let me see, the second page of the minutes, second paragraph, Charlotte's name is not finished. It says, Ms. Groden read a letter from Charlotte, who recently resigned. That's not completed.
This is on the October minutes, Rini?
Yes, October 2nd.
Okay.
Got it.
There's one other note that I wrote. I don't think it was on that one.
I think there was one thing at the very end of that, the articles for special town meeting.
Yeah.
The BOH request is in there, and I think we removed it, right?
Which article?
The BOH request for additional funding. It's listed under the
I
articles.
think we still reviewed it, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we reviewed it, but the motion was to remove it, to send it back to the Board of Health for review and consider, readdressing it at the next special town meeting.
Okay. And I think the only other thing is in that one and the previous one for September, the issues around the veterans exemption, just the way it's worded is just talks about local exemption of 22 clauses.
Yeah.
And it's not written correctly, so it's got to be MGL Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 22, A, B, C, D, whatever, just so that it's clear. Because right now, in the September one especially, at the very last page, it just says the veterans agent has requested the local exemption of 22 clauses. So that's certainly not well
But was
phrased.
that how it was presented at that meeting?
Was it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there were multiple, one, you can't just adopt one, which was the
Right.
survivor ones. You had to adopt all of the.
Right.
So I think that's the way it was presented at the time.
But don't we need to?
It was actually the original way it was written also, until town council weighed in on it.
Okay. I was just suggesting that we might mention the chapter and the actual cite the law rather than just the clauses that are mentioned as orphans. That's okay, however you want to do it. Nothing else from me.
Any other edits or anything? Is there a motion then to approve all of these with the, I guess in the end, there was one edit to Charlotte's name. Someone want to make a motion?
I move to approve May 14th, June 11th, September 17th, October 2nd with the edit for Charlotte's name.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so pending items. I'm just wondering, aside from the Easthampton media update, if we could just have an update on the green communities next time? What we're gonna do about evaluating the benefit of.
So, which was that?
Pardon?
What was that?
The green communities and Easthampton media for an update for next select board meeting.
Sure. And
then the Mass Dot.
Actually, Jen Ramsey had asked if she could come to the next meeting, so that will
Okay.
fit right in.
What is the purpose of her coming to the next meeting?
I think they may
things are
be
still
at a
broken.
point to present this with what they would like for wording for a new contract.
Oh, okay, so it's a different item. Because right now, the plan is, they gave us a detailed list of items that they recommended, and we told them that we had to go out to bid. And so the hope is that bid will go out sooner rather than later, and
Okay, you're looking for my update on the RFP then?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, got it.
But, next time we have a lot of agenda items. So, I mean, if it's just to discuss what's already been discussed, I don't know that that makes sense. If there's something new, then that's fine. Because right now, we just have to put it out to bid and get that going and then figure out. But I didn't know if there was some new thing that she was suggesting to come and talk about. Do you know, Robert? Robert's a board member, so that's why I'm asking him.
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. We've taken a contract, Easthampton Media, and presented it to our lawyer. They have returned it with some tweaks. So essentially, it's ready to be presented to the board. I don't know how the request for proposals is working. Are Easthampton Media supplying a list of equipment?
They already
supplied the
did.
list of
The engineering,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's what I thought. The concept is Jen wants to keep everyone abreast of what's happening and review, celebrate Southampton, that type of thing. And it'll also be the day after our next board meeting, so we'll have more updates. So just to keep everybody in touch.
Okay.
Cheers.
Sounds good, thank you. We already talked about announcements. Open time for the public?
Want to go?
No, you go first.
Cheers.
We talked about dates,
We did.
December 10th, and we had to talk about other dates in December.
I asked whether we wanted to talk about other
Okay.
dates in December or wait until it gets closer
All right,
and
so
decide
we'll
when
wait.
we need
Okay.
meetings.
All right.
Does anybody want to go ahead and pick dates now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. I remember an open time to the public started promptly at 7 o'clock.
The good old days.
Those were the days. 29 days ago, on Indigenous Peoples' Day, I called 911 for the 5th time in as many years. 4 times for my life mate, once for the fire. I want to thank the dispatchers. They're wizards. They're unbelievable. The fire department, the police department, out of the park. 4 of the times, I believe my life mate would not have made it unless I was there to call 911. I felt pretty heroic, but the real heroes are the fire department, the police department, dispatchers, not in that order. Without them, certainly life would be most different now. They were awesome. They were magical. So professional. Oh, wow.
Thank you very much for saying that.
Well, Barbara.
Yeah, I hope she's well. I didn't know that. Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. First thing is a save the date. We have Celebrate Southampton scheduled for next year. It's going to start on Friday, August 14th, with the band Decades.
They're good.
And then we'll go into August 15th, Saturday, at Conan Park to continue the festivities for the day.
Yay.
So that's my positiveness.
Thank you.
Is that where the report ends?
Yeah, now we go on to the next thing.
That's not what I meant.
All right. Thanks for starting with the good.
I watched the public hearing that took place last week on the 2 parcels of land next to Opa Opa, the old Opa Opa. I listened to everyone's comments and concerns about the zone being changed from commercial village to from the vice versa, commercial village, because it is a residential village right now. My concern is the comment that several board members stated that because there was no one there in the room, no one was in favor of this change. And that is an absolutely false statement. The next generation doesn't show up for meetings. They don't volunteer for events or committees. They do not have the same values of the seniors in town. They have values, their families. Hearings are not a priority, even for those of us who do show up for select board meetings, PTO meetings, school committee meetings, historical society meetings, Celebrate Southampton meetings, or CPC meetings. We cannot be at everything to voice our support or concerns that we have. I don't even know if everyone in town even knows what is going on with the corner of Pomeroy Meadow Road and Route 10. It really feels that every time a family tries to better themselves in this town by opening a business or trying to support an existing business, they have to jump through hoops and promise their firstborn child to them. It is very frustrating to review these meetings after they have already occurred, but you have given me the opportunity to speak publicly here today at this, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're always welcome to speak here, Tammy, and I think that the people that were proposing to build that site did comment during the meeting that they were encouraged to consider many of the other properties in town that are for sale and zone commercial, and I hope they do. I hope they do. Any other comments?
I mean, does the outcome of that meeting mean that this thing doesn't end, like, this would have to go to town meeting, correct?
Yeah, it goes to town meeting, and they
And so
basically...
is this going to go to town meeting? Because I think that it should. I think that,
Yeah.
I don't think that 15 or 20 people, or however many people filled this room, should be the deciding factor in something that's so important. The town should vote on it.
They just made a recommendation not to support it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't go to town meeting.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that was the point that they were trying to make, some of them anyway, that they recognized that there was like-mindedness in the room that night, and
Yeah.
that others that might have a different opinion were not here. And so they didn't feel that they could, and they didn't want to shut it down as a board, and didn't feel that they could, but they were unanimous, I believe, in their lack of support for the zoning change, but thinking that it will have to go before the town meeting to have a wider audience and wider opinions.
Well, that's fine. I mean, they're allowed to, just like every committee is allowed to render an opinion on whatever they think is right based on what their responsibilities are in town.
Tammy, do you know if this group has already purchased the land, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they own it?
Yes.
Okay.
And they even made a point of saying that, if the zoning thing doesn't go through, they do own the land, and they might consider, they even made a comment about, they might even consider doing something for affordable housing on the site. So said they're going to develop the land, and if it doesn't go through for the zoning, they will do something with the land.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the points were brought up, I mean, the tax revenue derived from that business versus the tax revenue if they were to put a multifamily or a couple multifamily homes or smaller affordable homes in, the tax revenue would be higher to the town.
On which side?
Pardon?
On which side of the equation?
On the business or the?
No, on the residential side.
Okay.
Well, wait, I mean, I take issue with that analysis, just because, like, you're not factoring in anything else. You're just factoring in property value. I mean, there's
tax
costs
revenue,
associated with
right.
individuals and
Right.
homes too. So no, I'm not with you on
Tax
that.
revenue alone would
Right.
be, because it would be, tax rates the same, business and residential's, or commercial residential, so it would
And
be
I
two
think,
homes.
and the other thing, because I was at the meeting, I didn't say anything, but I think a major concern was the traffic.
Right, and that's where I'm going to bring up your pending items, is the traffic study on Route 10.
Right.
When that changes to 35, if you push that through, it'll cause people to slow down in that area.
Yeah, but it's not going to do anything about the congestion, because you have,
Yeah,
you
that's
have
true.
an intersection there where there are like 3 or 4 driveways all at once in one. So the congestion, unless they widen the road and start putting in turn lanes, there's going to be a buildup of traffic there. And then the
There
other
already is.
concern is the proximity to the school, and the concern of the proximity of all of this traffic to the school and for the kids who walk back and forth from the school. And I mean, so I think the concern would be that there be some kind of a traffic feasibility study and a plan about how to ameliorate the situation, which, if it's a good business, which we hope it would be, that there will be a lot of traffic there. So we need to address it.
Yeah, I mean, to Tammy's point, though, we need more commercial taxes, if you will.
We've always talked about that.
Yeah.
Same as residential, it's not more.
Well, no, in the sense we want to build up more, do something with that land. But also, if you look at, if the purchase goes through of the old OPA, we're going to lose taxes.
Yes, we are.
So there's a chunk of change there. So we've got to make up at least for that, if not, go ahead. We don't want to lose on tax revenue.
Yeah.
But you're right, we need a larger
There
tax
is a
base.
business right across the street, right next door to the cemetery, too.
Right, for the party place, yeah.
I think one of the points made too was that with the master plan and ideas for commercial development in town, there was no intention to discourage that, but in fact, there's a whole lot of new commercial land that's opened up on the way toward Easthampton, and that is really the development corridor toward the north rather than the south. That was a point that was made that night.
I'm not saying I support a business being there, because it is a treacherous area. I mean, I've heard rumors what the business is. Did they say what the business?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay, so that's what I heard too, yeah.
Whole thing.
Yeah, so it's open and closed at certain hours. It's not having parties out in their backyard. It's
No,
not
but
having,
If you've seen the
kids running
Dunkin' now,
around.
I mean, you get a line going right the whole parking lot.
well, because that's a short drive-through. They would set this up differently.
Cars could be in the driveway, they said. And the reason they're doing this is because they don't own the building. They want to be able to own the building.
It makes
They were
makes
going
sense.
to construct one similar to Williamsburg that was a little nicer looking.
And I've been in the one in Williamsburg, and it's quite nice. I went in, and I'm not a, I was very
was
surprised
done very
how nice it
tastefully.
was. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
But the whole concern that I have is really over the traffic.
Yeah.
And if they can solve that and figure out another way in or another way out, like putting a side road in further down somewhere, I don't know. I don't have the answers, I just have the question.
I talked to him in the parking lot afterwards, and I said, you put this a little bit further down, there's plenty of commercial land, I would certainly support that. We want commercial businesses, but obviously this is the closest for-sale place to his current business, and he was hoping to catch all the Pomeroy Meadow traffic.
So I hope that we get an update on the traffic study for Route 10, because that will help tremendously in this, too.
Well, the traffic study there was because of the new road that was put in and the...
And they fly down it, even though it's 40.
And we basically got a recommendation, but where does that stand in terms of...
They sent a recommendation to Boston that it be 35 from the Cumberland Farms to Gun Road.
Okay, so that's not exactly the same area.
That area at all?
What the?
I thought it was the reverse area.
Actually, I thought it was from Pomeroy Meadow to
Cumberland
Gun
Farms
Road.
to,
Yeah, it
doesn't
was
encompass
Pomeroy Meadow
Pomeroy?
to Gun.
I'll go back and
I
look
think it's
at
Pomeroy Meadow to Gun, yeah. Because there was another one that was Gun Road. Remember the residents
Do
that
our
brought
police
that.
enforce this, or is this?
It would be
who
the police who would
enforces
enforce
this?
it.
Our police or the state police, even that's a
Our
state
police.
road?
it. It could be either.
Okay.
But the state has to approve it.
But right now, is it in the state hands for...
It's in the state,
for it to
yes,
be
it was
approved?
sent to Boston as
Okay.
a recommendation.
Okay, all right, it's on our pending list, we'll just have to keep
Okay,
up on
thank
it.
you very
Thanks.
much.
Thanks very much. Okay, I think that's it. We'll just, we need a motion to go into executive session. I think that's all the agenda items, unless somebody else has something else.
Yeah.
I move to go in executive session.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote.
Fowles, aye.
Roland, aye.
Roden, aye?
Tishman, aye.
Martin, aye. Rini, are you going to read why we're
We'll
going?
not be coming back to regular session, huh?
Are you going to read why we're going into executive session?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Okay, we have 3 items to discuss. The first is Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A. Number 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares, police officers, New England Benevolent Police Association. Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A. Number 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares. The dispatchers, New England Benevolent Police Association. And Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares. 71 Gilbert Road zoning enforcement. We'll take a 5-minute break and come. We will not return to open session.
And who seconded?
Matt made the motion.
Christine, you
Oh, I can't
Seconded,
wait
yep.
for that last one.